Greetings from light. Wishing you much, much love. So of course you know that love is not just a feeling of deep affection or a strong bond of regard and dedication. It is an energy field. An energy field far bigger than any other field of energy, having a vibration of frequencies far stronger than any other energy frequencies. What is an energy field? It is the range where that particular energy can reach. Love has an energy field whose range has still not come to an end. Its range is still in the process of growing. You can understand from this that no other energy field is greater than the field of love. And what is this love that we are referring to? We are not referring to affection. We are not referring to a feeling. We are not referring to that feeling or emotion that brings you happiness and unhappiness. We are referring to a field of consciousness. Love is a state of being. It cannot be felt only in the heart. The love that we refer to is a state that has to be lived in order to be experienced, not felt. When you live in a state of experience, you think, feel, consume, and are consumed by that energy consciousness. The consciousness of the current state in which humanity finds itself is not the state of love that we are referring to. When human beings speak of love, they often refer to a deep sense of fondness, almost always tinged with possessiveness, sometimes colored by jealousy, often reined in by the need to control. That is not a field of consciousness that can go very far. Such a field of consciousness has very narrow and restricted boundaries. For these boundaries to expand, energy from that energy field of consciousness that we refer to as love needs to start penetrating. So let us, for a little while, step out of the divine field of consciousness and step into the far narrower human field of consciousness. Let us understand that field of consciousness so that you can be aware of how to expand the boundaries of your field of personal consciousness and thereby help others to do the same. Before we begin to speak of this restricted field of personal consciousness and the restricted field of collective earth consciousness, let us explain to you very clearly that the individual fields of consciousness, though they are restricted by possessiveness and jealousy and dependency and grief and loss and rage and violence, are all present within the ever-growing field of divine love consciousness. Yes, we repeat, the divine love consciousness holds within it everyone's space of personal love consciousness. Visualize, if you must, a vast ocean that is constantly flowing outwards and constantly growing in magnitude and depth. And within this ocean are millions and millions and millions of tiny islands. Each island has its own boundary. Some islands are very small and some islands are larger than others. But all islands have a boundary where that island comes to an end. Of course, if you take this imagery a little further, you shall understand that all you have to do is to step off your island and you shall be in the ocean of divine love consciousness. And believe us when we tell you, it would be easier for you to step off an island and fall into an ocean than it would be for you to step off your island of personal love consciousness and step into the ocean of divine love consciousness. So let us explain these islands. Just as water finds its own level, personal love finds its own level. Remember that personal love consciousness resides in the large, ever-growing field of unified, divine, unconditional love consciousness. Therefore, the building blocks of personal love consciousness can be nothing else except divine, unconditional love energy. That is the building block that every single human being, nay, every single life form starts with. You wouldn't be able to feel the affection that you do. You wouldn't be able to feel the deep sense of delight when you fall in love if you hadn't started with the building blocks of divine love. And this is where love finds its own level. Every single living being starts with the common building blocks. Into this is added the human experience, starting from conditioning of parents, of the family, of the school, of society. Then comes experiences of fun and joy and togetherness and harmony, but also experiences of quarrel and conflict and disharmony and hatred and disapproval and prejudice. All these experiences, we have often called them only events. Remember that. All these experiences are added onto the building blocks of divine love consciousness. Divine love consciousness energy rises up to mingle with these human experiences. The purpose of this rising up of this energy is to invalidate, make non-issues of those things you consider as troublesome, difficult, or as hurdles. Divine love rises up to take away the harsh edges. And it does succeed initially. But as more and more human experiences continue to come at a rapid pace, divine love consciousness is unable to meet with those human experiences Not because the energy doesn't have the power, but because you, as a human being, start exercising your free will choice and make decisions. And you might make a decision, I shall never speak to her again. I shall take revenge. He is not to be trusted. These people should be avoided. These are the free will choices that you make. Divine love consciousness has the ability to break through all free will choices, but it does not have the divine right to do so. As soon as a free will choice is made, the energy of divine love consciousness steps back in respect. Yes, in respect, for it recognizes that this free will choice has been made by a soul in progress, and that this free will choice shall be an extremely significant stepping stone in that soul's progress. So as more and more experiences of the humankind enter and are heaped onto the building blocks of divine love consciousness, they are followed by free will choices. Those choices that are positive and expansive bring up even higher the energy field of divine love. But those free will choices that are separated in their nature, that judge another, that decide to isolate either another or themselves, such free will choices are like large signs saying, stay out. And the divine love energy moves back. This is how this blend of choices, human experiences, and divine love consciousness create a blend of so-called human love that finds its own balance. Those human beings who are genuinely forgiving in nature, not defeated, not resigned, genuinely forgiving. Those human beings who, in spite of personal pain felt by them, are able to empathize with the pain of another and step out of their own pain for a short while in order to help alleviate the pain of another. Their levels will be much higher than those who are embroiled in their pain, in their cruelty, in their judgment, in their divisiveness, in their separation, in their greed. Whenever you encounter greed in yourself or in another. And here we tell you that we are not referring to greed only as monetary or economic greed. Greed for love, greed for recognition, greed for power, greed for approval. Whenever you encounter greed, do not label it as greed. Instead, see it for what it is, an empty space. A space behind a door that is saying, stay out, where the divine love consciousness cannot enter. Those levels will be very low. As more and more free will choices come into play, the divine love consciousness settles lower and lower. But never is it absent, because we remind you it is your building block. If you have that as a building block, can it be impossible for people to change, as some of you think it is? So often, you must have caught yourself thinking this, or heard another saying this. It is impossible for this person to change. It is impossible for the system to change. You are forgetting that the building blocks are energies of divine love consciousness. Change, positive change, transformation is never impossible. But when you think this, when you say this, what have you created? A free will choice. And the door says, stay out. Now, try to think of the quantum effect of all these doors. Let's move from just personal islands to the earth island. What is the quantum effect of all these personal doors? The doors are way more in number than the people, because each individual will have hundreds of such doors. So in your earth consciousness, now there are millions of doors saying, stay out. And here you are saying, but we want to change. The world must change. We want an end to war. We want an end to poverty. We want an end to bloodshed. But beloveds, those doors cannot be penetrated. Again we repeat, not because divine love is incapable of it, but because divine love does not have the divine right. In not penetrating these doors of your free-willed choice, either personal or collective, the divine respects you the most. When you encounter a very young child who you know is unable to make his or her decisions because the child does not have the emotional, intellectual and mental capabilities to do so, you shall override the decision of that child and ensure that your decision, which is a wiser decision, prevails. Do you do this for an adult who is your equal? Or even though you might see that the decision is wrong, you step back and allow another who is your equal to continue on with that decision. Do you understand now why we say that when the divine love consciousness is not given the divine right to penetrate those doors of free will choice, it is because divine source is respecting you as its equal. So when we say that you are God, we mean that God energy, the energy of divine love consciousness, that force field of divine love consciousness is the energy of that which you have termed God. And that is your building block. Can you see now that you are God in a most substantial manner? Not in just a manner of speaking. Every energy field is contained within the ever-growing energy field of divine love consciousness. Yes, even the energy of hatred. Even that is contained in the energy field of divine love consciousness. Why? Because all energy fields lie within each other. They do not lie separately side by side. And as your divine love consciousness energy is the largest and still growing energy field, it is easy therefore to understand that all energy fields therefore must lie within this. And this is where the solution lies. Yes, there are problems in your world. There are universal global problems and there are personal problems. But all problems will find their solution in this awareness that all energies lie within the field of divine love consciousness. So, how do we go about finding these solutions? 1. is to remember that the free will choices are doorways that shut out the energy of divine love consciousness. So your first step, and no solution can be found if this step is skipped. The first step is to become aware of the free will choices. First, become aware of your own. When you become aware of your own, you shall understand that your free will choices, personal though they are, have contributed to the free will choices of the collective consciousness. Read your newspapers. Hear the various programs on your television screens. In fact, hear the music that is being written today. Hear the words. You shall be easily able to identify the free will choices. As soon as you have identified them, you have to ensure that you open those doors. How? By understanding that the decision you made or are still in the process of making is a decision that can either bring an upsurge of divine love consciousness or shut it out. So if your free will choice in a past moment has been revenge should be met with cruelty and violence so that the other learns a lesson. Aren't there so many who believe this? Then that free will choice door must be opened with the recognition that revenge, cruelty, and violence only beget themselves again and again. It is the easier path to follow. The more difficult path is to step back and choose to remember that violence begets violence, revenge begets revenge, and cruelty begets cruelty. And therefore shift your own response. Maybe not to love, maybe not to forgiveness yet, but you can shift that to understanding. You can shift that to awareness. You can shift that to personal recognition of a free will choice. Humanity is very far away from reaching that goal that many of you wish to reach, that goal of unconditional love. But you are not far away from awareness, recognition, and wisdom. that you have close at hand. There is one more way. Remember, we told you that free will choices that are positive and expansive bring an upsurge in the divine love consciousness, which means the level shall rise. Not only should you focus on those free will choices that are the shut doors, but you must, in awareness, make free will choices in your thought, in your belief, in your word, and in your action that shall be both positive and expansive. The more you make such choices, the greater will be the level. The higher the level, the easier it is to not only recognize the shut doors, but to then open them. Does it happen overnight? Of course not. But why not start today? Each time a judgment comes to your lip, and it may not be about someone personally related to you. It may be about someone living millions of miles away, who you read about or hear on your television screen. But as soon as the judgment comes to your lip, lock the lips. You cannot take away your thought right now. But instead of two energies coming forth at a spurt, thought and word, now it shall be one. You have brought down the severity by 50%. Lock the lips. And isn't it interesting that 2016 and 2017 are throwing up for you such large individuals whom you cannot ignore and whom you judge all the time? Because these individuals are not walking what you consider the spiritual path. In fact, they are isolating religions and communities. And you would like everyone to be embraced. Are we right? But in that, you reject and isolate the one you are judging. So how all embracing are you? So one is isolating a certain nationality or those who might be homosexual, and you are isolating those you do not find spiritual. A book by a different name. The door is the same. And let us get a little closer to home now. And let us enter your own homes and your own schools. everyone who is seated here is aware that all the children being born today and in the very recent past are master energies. And yet, as parents, you label them difficult, stubborn, impossible to handle, dyslexic, attention deficit, troublemakers. And not only do parents do that, but they stand by in silence and often in full agreement as your schools do that. And at a very young age, this master energy, whose vibrations are way stronger than your own, puts up free will decisions. Do not forgive. Do not trust. Fight your battles with everything that you have. And as a society, you ensure that the master building blocks that these children are born with are being relentlessly suppressed. But you say you don't want war. But you say you don't want bloodshed. And the universe has heard you. And the universe has granted your wish by these children being born. But do you allow them to live as masters? Or do you just want them to be you? If you do have to fight a war, why don't you fight against your education system? If you do have to fight a war, why don't you fight against all the labels that these children are burdened with? If you do have to fight a war, why don't you fight against yourself as it shouts and screams within the four walls of a home where there should only be love? But you say you do not want war. And you say you do not want bloodshed. Is love a day to be celebrated? So is it only on February 14th that you shall send messages of love? And then what happens on the 15th? Go back to judgment and criticism and cruelty and lack of respect? Do not celebrate this superficial Valentine's Day if you are not going to celebrate every day as a day of love. Then 14th February is a hypocrisy, an international-sized hypocrisy. Do not attempt to address or open all the shut doors. Work with one at a time. Each one shall know which of their beliefs are not positive ones, and which of their beliefs are the least positive. Work with that shut door. And if you have the courage, ask the divine field of love consciousness to help you by placing before you every day an event that shall tempt you to close the door even harder, but shall also give you the opportunity to step back and open that door. Relationships are the way the soul chooses its experiences for growth. And so when you attempt to manifest a relationship that is filled exclusively with love and roses and chocolates, now there you are asking for an impossible. Why? Because your soul has chosen the relationship as your growth. And by asking for something diametrically opposite, what you are asking for is lack of growth, and that is why it is impossible. Because the soul shall never choose anything that shall stop or hinder its growth. And we repeat, the soul shall never choose anything that shall stop or hinder its growth, either personally or collectively, not even a president. Every person whom you believe you have the right to tirade against is your greatest opportunity for soul growth. So relationships are not based upon love, but they are based, nay, they are constructed entirely from the energy of divine love. But you wish to experience the sweetness and romance of the human love that your soul very cunningly makes you experience for a short time, so that you very willingly come wagging your tail towards the soul experience of growth. So yes, we urge you to be in love, but don't fall in love. Rise in it. and with you. Attempt to make just one more rise in love. And if that one more can be a child, whether your own or anyone else's, then you shall have aided a master energy towards the fulfillment of its purpose. A purpose that can only benefit you. Greetings